Hello, everyone, and welcome to Inside the Newsroom. I'm Maddie Paul. Inside the Newsroom, we bring you the trending stories of the Keloland area, and we bring in our newsroom staff members to this digital desk to talk about their passions and experiences as they're collecting and publishing the stories that you see every day on our Keloland newscast and on Keloland.com. Now we're starting with the biggest theme of this week, which is always weather. I mean, we're always talking about weather. So joining me right now at the digital desk is our meteorologist, Scott Munt, to talk about some incoming rain. But first of all, Scott, we're wiping the sweat off of our foreheads because that heat wave, boom, is gone.
So correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't that the weather you love?
Yeah, okay. See, I was going to get into this.
We had this discussion before.
I was going to ask you how you beat the heat this weekend because I was outside every day. All day I was outside and I was even walking. I was doing the good stuff, getting my moves in, sweating a bunch with my sunscreen too.
Oh, yeah.
But I couldn't avoid the heat. So what did you do? Did you beat the heat or did you embrace it?
Well, the wife and I took a quick trip toward the Yankton, Vermilion areas. We left on Thursday, came back on Friday. Like I said, it was a quick trip.
Yeah.
So that was Thursday, Friday, but we did some hiking, some walking along the river. Very nice, but again, sunny, hot. We had water bottles with us. So we beat the heat that way. And then on Saturday, we didn't do I think we did a lot of stuff inside and had to hang some pictures or something.
Yeah.
So it stayed in the air conditioning. And then Sunday, I'm an umpire on Sundays. I went through 4 bottles of water, maybe a thing of Powerade too.
Wow.
And I got through it. It was hot. Everybody was checking up on each other. People are offering me water, and which is great. It's fantastic. But able to beat the heat through, drinking a lot of fluids. The nice thing about Sunday, okay, looking at the silver lining, I don't think it was as humid as it was on Saturday. I know we still hit 96 for a high yesterday. We hit 99 on Saturday, so we still haven't hit 100. We didn't hit 100 last year, so you have to go back to 2023, the last time Sioux Falls hit 100. I know we had some 100-degree heat in parts of Keloland, mainly across western, central, maybe south central South Dakota, but nothing like that now.
Wow.
We're getting a break from the heat, so we're back to weather that you really don't care for.
Now, well, I can do some 80s,
teasing.
I guess. I can maybe do some 80s.
Yeah.
The one thing I kept hearing this weekend, too, was the weather felt like Las Vegas weather because it was so hot and it was sunny outside, but then that wind wasn't really forgiving. It was just hot wind on you, too.
Wind coming out of Melanie described it. My wife described it like, oh, great, back into the hairdryer.
Oh, the hairdryer. Now that's crazy.
And it didn't stop straight from the south. Yeah, I know we had wind gusts every bit in that mid 40 mile per hour range in and around Sioux Falls. Some spots may have been a little stronger than that. But we started to see some change on Sunday, not in the east, but into western and northwestern South Dakota, where Buffalo, the northwestern corner of the state, they had a high, I think it was 67 yesterday. So, that's a good almost 30-degree difference.
Keep me away from Buffalo.
Sioux Falls to Buffalo. Don't worry. Continue to be nice, and they won't send you out to Buffalo.
Okay, perfect.
Maybe that's the idea.
Yeah, I want the sweat, I guess. I can wipe that off now. Another thing that happened this weekend, and I think it started on Friday, which was a little strange phenomenon, was seeing the roads buckle up. And so could you explain a little bit about why we see something like this happen where it gets so hot out and you see the roads just start coming up like this?
Right, and we've seen these types of things before. Anytime you heat things up, it expands. And it goes for like the weakest point there. As this thing continues to expand, the roads continue to expand. Whatever the weakest point is, starts to buckle up and it raises, unfortunately. And then that can cause problems, obviously, with your car driving over that. It looks like that one's closer to the curb.
Yeah.
But, these are things that you can see, almost every day, depending on where you drive in Sioux Falls. It's just the way the thing is, just the way it works. Now, I'm not saying that, yes, we have the streets buckling every day, but you do see evidence of that happened maybe in years prior. And, of course, they do a great job going out there, fixing things, putting out the cones, as you see here, to alert the drivers. But, it's common. It's when we get these temperatures easily in the middle, upper 90s, we start to see it a little bit more.
And so, Scott, let's talk about not the heat, because now we're getting a little bit cooler. Now we're going to see some wet rain coming in, which maybe Great. Can you talk a little bit about what we're going to expect the next couple of days?
Yeah, dual temperatures are falling back. Today will be close to 80. I wanted to start things off with our average June rainfall because June is typically the month where a lot of us receive our highest rain on a climate average. And you can see Sioux Falls comes in around 4.25 inches, 3.5 in Mitchell, close to 4, we'll say, in Huron. Not as much in western South Dakota, about a 3 1/3. Northeastern Kettleland. I do want to point this out because I think my next slide or two will show northeastern South Dakota. Close to 4 inches in Sisseton. Let's go ahead and bring in another slide, as this is what we've had so far this month. This does not include what fell after midnight in southeastern South Dakota. This takes us up to midnight. So we're around 1.25 inches, still well below our average. But look at northeastern South Dakota. Sisseton, close to 6 inches of rainfall. Watertown's at 3. That's good. 2 1/3 in Huron, about 2.5 in Aberdeen. And then the numbers greatly start to fall as you work into western South Dakota. Rapid City at about 1/2 inch. This graphic is a comparison as to where we stand so far this month. So we're still under 2 inches of rainfall in Sioux Falls. And I think for the past 24 hours, Sioux Falls is around 9/10 of an inch, maybe 1,500 of that fell before midnight. So you can take off about, 7,500. So we're probably around 1.25 inches below if you count what fell after midnight in Sioux Falls. So we're playing catch up. And we'll continue to do that as we go through this week, Maddie, because we're looking at better chances for rain. Now, it won't hit everybody, as is the case usually. Let's go ahead and show you what's expected as we go. I just have this going through the work week. So this is through Friday.
Great.
Notice how the colors do change, south central to southeastern Kettleland. This is additional rainfall amounts. This does not include what fell yesterday evening, during the overnight, into this morning. We're going with additional amounts of 1 inch or 2 in southeastern South Dakota, Iowa, and Minnesota. I really think a lot of that will end up falling tomorrow night and into Wednesday. But for the whole week, we'll go with areas over 2 inches. Even this morning, we saw, I think it was Avon, that came in over 3 inches of rainfall.
Wow. So
the moisture is stacked in the atmosphere. That will continue through at least midweek. And with that, we'll have to watch to see where the heavy rain sets up. Right now, it looks like a lot of it will fall in southeastern South Dakota, Iowa, and Minnesota. Hopefully, we get some rain in the central South Dakota. Pierre's been relatively short. They're about 50% of what they usually get over the past 30 days, over the past month. So, yes, they could use some rain, as well as parts, I think, even south central South Dakota. In and around winter, they could use some rainfall, too.
Do you have any other graphics you wanted to show, Scott?
I think I stopped. Oh, yep, I think I stopped here.
No problem. So I have a quick question. So with this rain that's coming in this week, I'm trying to think of ways to describe how we're going to be seeing it. Is it like going to be consistently scattered rainfall coming in, or how would you describe it?
Well, I think a lot of it will be at night. Much of today, if not all today, will be dry once this rain has moved out to the east and northeast. So, we'll have our sunshine. It will be a cooler day. It will feel a lot cooler. Temperatures near 80 for today. A nice northwest wind. It's later in the day for tomorrow, mainly tomorrow night, Wednesday morning. And I think that will be the trend going forward. Much of the day part will stay dry. It's when we get into the evening and overnight, I think we'll have our best chance to see the rain.
And no chances of severe weather at this point?
We do. We have some, not as prevalent as maybe past June's, the way it looks right now, because June has a history. Right, June has a history of getting rather
in this
volatile.
time, too, always like that third week of June.
Right, and that's one that we typically highlight. Well, maybe this time around, we'll have to deal with the heavy rain. The rain's great. Let's just not get too much rain in the one certain location.
Then we'll have a busy news day.
Then we'll have, unfortunately, that may lead to flooding. I know that they had some flood watches for northeastern Nebraska last night into this morning, and they had some flash flooding move through during, I think, the overnight hours in northeastern Nebraska. And, give us the rain. Don't give us too much rain, though.
Scott, is there anything else that you'd like our viewers to know about the incoming rain this week?
Well, it's nice to see it. Rain's not a bad thing. And we know that. Let's just not get too much all at once.
Not at once. Scott, thank you for joining me at the digital desk for this update. And stick with us because we're going to have another reporter come and sit at the digital desk to talk about a trending story. You're not going to want to miss this. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Inside the Newsroom. Now, the Sioux Falls Sculpture Walk downtown now has one less exhibit after recent weekend events. Joining me now is our reporter, Carly Phillips, who has been following the story since Friday. And Carly, what did we learn when we saw that sculpture was destroyed on Friday?
Yeah, well, we learned at police briefing Friday morning last week that on Thursday it was a 45-year-old man who actually allegedly destroyed it, according to police. So he was arrested that night, but unfortunately that sculpture was destroyed and it's not there anymore.
And when you went out and saw the sculpture, it was crumbled to the ground, wasn't it?
Yeah, when I went out there Friday morning, the pieces were still there, but they were just broken into a million different ones. And the sculpture before, when it was built, it was kind of like stacked on top of each other, and it was fairly tall. And so just to kind of see all those pieces surrounded on the ground, it was really, really sad.
Yeah, and the Sculpture Walk did post about the damage on their Facebook and asked the public to share any information that they had about the incident, and that is included in our story. And as you continued to follow this story, Carly, you did a weekend report where you just went out and talked to people on the street about what they thought about the Sculpture Walk. What did you hear from people?
Yeah, so it really didn't matter if you were a Sioux Falls resident or you were just kind of passing through. I talked to people kind of from all over, and, they had a lot of great things to say about the Sculpture Walk, and that it was really cool to be able to see, different kinds of art and creative levels. But then to hear that, one of these had been unfortunately broken was also really upsetting to a lot of people. And kind of that, why would someone do this, with something as cool as this?
So it sounded like you got some different moods in your story. You got the unfortunate factor that one of our exhibits was destroyed, but then you had the overall happiness and hopefulness from people saying that they love the Sculpture Walk, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, I talked to one man with his grandson that they were traveling through Sioux Falls, and he kind of mentioned that seeing the broken sculpture was also kind of a reminder that this artwork should be admired, but it should also be respected. To an extent, don't touch the artwork, don't hate on it, and things like that. And he kind of touched on that, just kind of a reminder for people.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing that part. And Carly, when you go out and you do stories with people who are literally on the street and you're just grabbing them to say, hey, can you be a part of the story? What kind of goes through your head as you're gathering this reaction and this sound? Is there things that you look for in those type of interviews that you're like, I hope we get here, or I hope that they say something like this? Or how do you shape your story based off of those interviews?
I mean, there's always kind of going into an interview or talking to someone who you've never met before, there's a kind of that hope that you hope it goes a certain way, or they say something for a certain angle that you want your story to be, but essentially you don't know what they're going to say. And so you kind of have to, as you're doing the interview, you kind of have to be thinking about, okay, shaping your story as you're doing the interview process and kind of remembering what they say and thinking, oh, this could be a good, soundbite for this part of my story, maybe.
And is it helpful for you? Like, do you remember those bits and pieces while you're out on the field doing the interview? Or do you have to come back to the newsroom and be like, okay, strategically, here's my plan? Like, what's that process like for you?
It definitely depends on the story and the day, but I usually try to take a few notes when I'm listening, notable things that they say, so I can kind of keep that in the back of my mind. So then when I get back to the station, it's maybe a little bit easier to find those sound bites.
Was there anything that surprised you as you were talking to the people for the story about the Sculpture Walk, whether it was like, oh, wow, I'm surprised that they all had this hope in them about the Sculpture Walk, or they all mentioned that they liked it? What was something that surprised you?
I think just, the willingness for people, to be willing to talk about the Sculpture Walk. Sometimes it's hard when you're looking for, we call them man on the street interviews, when you go up and you find random people and interview them. And sometimes, people don't always want to talk, but it was really easy for me to find, people willing to talk about the Sculpture Walk and how they enjoy it. And then also just getting that reaction to hearing that the one was broken. And so I think that's what really stood out to me was that, you know, the community support for something really cool like this.
I'm glad you got yeses because whenever I do Man on the Streets, it's like the no's pile up, and that's fine. That's fine if you get some no's, but then when you get those couple of yeses, it's like, ah, I have a story. How many no's do you think you got that day? Or were they just yes, 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 yes?
I think I got about 2 no's.
Okay.
So really, we did pretty good. So
You got people wanting to show up and show out for you. I love it. Is there anything else, Carly, that you would like to talk about with this story, or any updates following up, or anything about how you created it?
You know, I think we covered pretty much all of it, but I know that under this full story on kelloland.com, there's information about the sculpture walk in general and just, you know, how you can kind of go around Sioux Falls and kind of see some of those different pieces of artwork.
Carly, thank you so much for joining me here. And still to come on Inside the Newsroom, we are talking about some input coming in for a new city park. Stay with us. Welcome back to Inside the Newsroom. Now, the city of Sioux Falls needs some help designing a new park on the northeastern side of town. The reporter who did this story is Kelly Voke, and she is joining us now at the digital desk to tell us what the city was saying. Kelly, welcome to the digital space.
Well, it's good to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course. Must be a little different from broadcast world. I always say when we record here, like what you see in this space is going to be a little different than what you see up in the studio. And I think maybe you would agree with that.
It is different, but it's a nice change of pace. I like it. It's a little more relaxed and conversational.
Good. I'm glad you said that because that's always my biggest fear. I'm like, oh, we got to make sure we're like Zen mode, podcasty, getting in the zone. I love this. Thank you for being here. I wanted to talk about your city park story because all the construction that's going on with parks right now in Sioux Falls, it's interesting to know that we're going to get another beautiful park in our city. Can you explain a little bit about what you learned from city officials through your story?
Yeah, so this park, it's in the northeastern part of town, just off of North Dubuque Avenue. And this is going to be a neighborhood park. So it's not like Falls Park or maybe Frank Olson. This is going to be a smaller park nestled in a neighborhood. And I was told by the city that with these neighborhood parks, you know, they like to have a park within a half mile of the rooftops. So this is for, you know, these people in this residential area to come and use, or anyone to come and use, but it will certainly be convenient for people who live in the area. But what it will look like, that's not known yet. That's why a survey is out now asking for people's input on it.
And so did city officials give any examples about what they're looking for? Is it certain amenities or what do they want?
Well, that's all up to the people who take the survey.
Okay.
I did look at the survey. There are several questions on it. One of the questions is, what kind of amenities would you like to see in the park? Maybe that's a playground or a walking loop. What time of the day would you use it? Would you come here on your lunch break? Would you come at night? Would you spend your weekends here? So they're trying to use all that feedback to really shape how it would look.
And while you were out on this story, Kelly, what was one thing visually that you wanted our viewers to kind of understand and to grasp onto for your story?
Well, the park is so far a blank canvas. It's about 4 acres of bare land, so really to help people envision what could be there. And then all the houses around it. There are a lot of families in the area, and that area continues to grow. They continue to add more houses, and so you can see why something like a park is an important resource in the area.
In your story, too, you got sound from not only a city official, but also somebody who lived in the area. Can you explain why it's so important for us journalists to have like 2 sides of a story or just 2 voices in general in a story?
Well, of course we want the facts from the officials. What is this going to look like? Why? How? Those are all important questions. But to really relate to the story and get to the point of why it's important, you want to talk to those people who are living and working in these areas every day. And so in the case of a park, you want to talk to people who live in the area and find out why they like parks. Why do you think this is important for your neighborhood? So that really brings the story home and kind of lets people know, why they should care and why this is important.
And then when you go out, when you find like someone for this story, let's say, for example, just a resident who's there, you're not going to know what they're going to say when you
Right.
interview them, right? So when you go out and do your interviews like that, where it's just, hey, can you just be a part of this story? When you come back into the newsroom and you're writing that story, what do you look for in interviews that help you shape that impact that you're seeing?
Well, that's a good point. You talk to strangers and ask them to be a part of your story, and you have no idea what they're going to say. And whatever they say is the story.
Mm-hmm.
So this person really liked parks. They like exploring new parks. And so I included that in my story. Really, you include what they say. Of course, you want to include things that are factual.
Yep.
If someone says the sky is red, you probably don't want to put that in your story because that's not true.
Mm-hmm.
But really, their perspective and their opinion is what you're putting in your story.
And this story stuck to the facts a lot, which is really good why you got that city official to speak on the subject. And we're running out of time now, but is there anything else that you'd like to say about creating your story or some details about the story at all that you think our viewers should know?
No, I just think it's an interesting process to find out how the city creates parks and how people have a chance to be a part of it.
Yeah, they can be a part of it. Kelly, thank you for joining me at the digital desk.
Thank you, Maddie.
Of course. And stay with us. We'll be right back after the break. Welcome back, everyone. Due to extreme heat, you may be noticing some road buckling, especially on Interstate 29. Scott and I were talking about this earlier in the show. And the southbound Interstate 29 has about 4 locations where the pavement has buckled as of Saturday between exits 150 and 140, which is about north of Brookings. And this is according to SD.dot. So crews have completed temporary repairs over there on those exits. And signage is up on the interstate and also on SD 511, where they note some reduced speed limits at about 30 miles per hour. So that's what you can expect to see on those roads today. And also, we should have an update about those road bucklings tonight on our evening newscast. Thank you so much for watching Inside the Newsroom, and we'll see you tomorrow at 1 o'clock.